All right. Well, I'm glad that you are all here this morning, and I've enjoyed meeting many of you. We have this little magazine. There's some of them laying on the back table there. Please take one of these if you haven't already. They've got some cool stories in here. I call them God stories, and that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to show you pictures and tell you God stories, okay? And Nancy is totally correct that this project is God's project. I just happen to be fortunate enough to have a front row seat. Also, that bulletin insert, it talks a little bit about our logo, so I won't take the time to describe all of that, except for one piece. This is our logo, and when you look at the very center of it, of course there's the graduation cap, and there's a tassel hanging down. And at the end of the tassel is the cross. Christ is at the center of everything we do. Well, we do take mission trips to Africa. And if you would like to go with me, how many is going to go with me? Huh? You like that? Huh? Okay. All righty. And yeah, you get to do this if you want. You don't have to, but if you want, it'll be laying by your bed in the morning. And no, and actually, yeah, Lena's never seen one, but you can do that if you want to. And if you want to get a hold of me, and we are going on our next mission trip next August, August of 24, and it's for 2 weeks. We leave on a Thursday, I think it's August the 6th or 8th, something like that, for 2 weeks. So if you're interested in going, my contact information is on the back. It'll be the mission trip of your life. We've been doing it for a number of years, and we've had many people that say, hey, I'm going back, and they've gone back because it will be enjoyable. One thing cool about it is English is one of the official languages of Zimbabwe, and so the people you work with, many of them you can get to know, and that gives it that extra special feeling. Well, anyway, where is our project? It is in Africa. It's in the southern part, called a country called Zimbabwe. Used to be called Rhodesia. So that is, for some of us older folks, that might be, but you see where it's at. But that does bring us to our scripture lesson for this morning. It's found in John, and I'll just read the first part of it. The Pharisees were having a hissy fit that Jesus had healed a blind man. And so they said, they asked him whether Jesus was a sinner or not. He says, I don't know. One thing I do know, I was blind. Well, Noah's Farm, we really started 16 years ago. Jerry Nelson, he's a concert pianist, and he also was on staff at Denver First Church for 30 years, and he plays the piano big time. And, well, anyway, he was in 2006, he was on a mission trip to Africa, and over there he was playing the piano and doing all of his music stuff, and while he was there, he met a local pastor from Zimbabwe called Noah Sabanda. We'll just call him Noah, okay? And so he met him, and this is Noah here. Well, fast forward, that was in 2006. January of 2007, Jerry was in San Antonio, and I've known Jerry since I was a kid. So whenever he come to San Antonio, which is where we live, we would haul him around to his various concert sites. And one of those concert sites was down at a place called Bibleville. Maybe some of you have heard of it, down by McAllen. he had a concert there on a Saturday afternoon and then Saturday evening, and my job was to drive him back up 5 hours to San Antonio. Well, the concert got late, and people wanted his autograph and buy the CDs and all that kind of stuff, and it got really late, and I got really tired. And my job was to stay awake and drive these next 5 hours, and that was going to be a challenge. So they started telling me stories. So I'm driving. Jerry's sitting next to me. Lane and Jerry's wife, Rachel, were in the back seat. While we were driving along, they realized I was tired. And so what do you do when somebody's tired driving? You talk to them, right? So Jerry started telling me stories about this pastor, Noah, and his wife, Margaret, that he had met while he was on his mission trip just a few months earlier. He got to telling us these stories, and while he was saying these stories, at 2 o'clock in the morning, God spoke to me. January of 2007, God simply said, "Help Noah." Now, I work at a CPA firm. I'm an EA, stands for an enrolled agent. I'm on the phone all day talking with the IRS. I represent people getting doo-doo with the IRS, and I try and work something out. And that's my job. And while I'm driving along, God speaks to me and says, "Help Noah." I've never met the guy, but I'm hearing stories about him. I get home, and I said, "Honey, before we get in bed," I said, "I need you to know that while Jerry was telling us those stories, that God spoke to me and said, 'Help Noah.'" And Lane says, God spoke to her and said, "Help Noah." We better help Noah. But we didn't know what that meant. And that's the key. You just do what God wants you to do. Yeah. Well, so that was in 2007. And Noah said he invited us to come over there in 2008 and wanted to do a mission trip thing. And so we started telling some friends, "Hey, we're going to Zimbabwe, Africa. If you want to donate something, we'll take it with." Did they start donating stuff? Now, I don't know if you can't quite see it, but right here is a guitar. And one of Lane's friends that she worked with, her son loved music. And he was killed in a bad drug thing and whatnot. And so in his memory, she bought this guitar, and we took it over there. And then some other people donated a sound system, their speakers. I mean, we loaded this Mazda truck down. So it was Jerry and Rachel and Lane and I going to Zimbabwe to do a mission trip. We're taking all this stuff with, and we fly into Zambia, right next door. So we meet Noah at the border. So this is at the border of Zambia and Zimbabwe. We load all this stuff into Noah's truck, this Mazda truck. Well, that truck was wore out before we even started loading it. Okay. And as you see, we overloaded it. And we had a 7-hour drive. The closer we got to our destination, the louder the engine knocked. Literally, as we pulled into the parking lot of Noah's church, the engine on that Mazda truck seized up. Now, for you gearheads, what really happened is the oil pump went bad and the engine locked up, okay? Well, here we are, our only means of transportation, and now we don't have it. And in Noah's church, you know how many people have a vehicle? Maybe one other. So this was the church bus, the church, what he called on people in the hospital. This was it, and now it doesn't work. What do we do? I said, no, can we get another engine? He said, even if we could, he said, how'd I know it's any good? And I'm thinking, we don't have any money for an engine anyway. So we borrowed a car from a friend of a friend, And we just got in a big circle and prayed. Now, I'm a layman, so my prayers are real simple. No offense, Pastor, but God, we need an engine for a Mazda truck. Okay? What else is there to say? A week goes by. We're now back in America, and I'm driving to my church. I attend New Braunfels Church of the Nazarene, and I'm driving to the church in my Chevy truck. I emphasize Chevy in case anybody has a Ford or something. I'm driving a Chevy truck, and my truck's working fine. And I'm driving and the air conditioner's working fine. But then I think about Noah. He doesn't even have a way to get to church. So he has to walk, or a couple of little pennies to ride a bus. And I'm like, oh, man. I started sending emails out and calling people, please pray for an engine for a Mazda truck. I have people all over the world praying for an engine for a Mazda truck. And another week goes by. God, we need an engine for a Mazda truck. This is the pastor. Another week goes by. At the CPA firm I work at, this lady come in the door. She says, I have an appointment with Wanda, and Wanda's office was just across the hall, and we keep our doors open, so my desk is here. Here's the hallway, and there's Wanda's desk in that office right there, and we can hear each other, you know. And she says, I have an appointment with Wanda. And I'm listening to her, and she had a funny accent. So I said, well, here, Wanda, I said, this lady has an appointment with you. And so I go in there, and I'm sitting at my desk, and they start talking. And she said, yes, I just moved here from South Africa. Do you know where South Africa is compared to Zimbabwe? They're right next door, okay? She says, I just moved here from South Africa. And my husband and I bought a local business, a Japanese engine business. Mazda. She said, we just moved here 6 weeks ago, and we're getting things organized, and we need to learn about your American tax stuff and bookkeeping and whatnot. And she says, I need you to teach me. I get up from my desk, and I walk over to Wanda, and I said, pardon me. I said, Tracy, my name is Les, and you mentioned, you know, she says, my husband and I moved here, bought the local franchise, but his brother is still back in South Africa, and they own the largest engine business in South Africa. I said, would they have? Amen. Would they have an engine for a Mazda truck? She said, well, sure, we got hundreds of engines. And she texted or emailed her brother-in-law, would you have an engine for this kind of a Mazda truck? Yes. I got a hold of Noah. Send somebody down there, and there's an engine waiting for you, and we got the engine back to... Praise the Lord. Now, we've probably all been involved in a miracle of some kind or another. But I can point to this moment in time. Of all the CPA firms in San Antonio, and there's a potload, of all of them, she came to ours. She could have got the same information at any of them, but she came to ours. And I happened to be in the office that day. And I heard her. I'm thinking, Tracy, you said you just came here 6 weeks ago. I was in Africa 6 weeks ago when this whole thing happened. Exactly what day did you fly here? And we actually were not on the same plane. It was 4 days difference. God knew that, hey, I just got to get her organized a little bit and get her to call y'all and get the appointment. And that took 6 weeks, and here we are. I then realized that this project called Noah's Farm was ordained by God. I mean, if he provided a miracle like this, I better be ready to hold on. And, oh, Lordy, I got to tell you about Sylvia. I was over in Africa, over in Zimbabwe last summer, and in June, and Margaret, Noah's wife, Margaret, she's an ordained minister herself. And we were having this big service at this church, and she said, Les, I need you to talk to Sylvia. Okay. I don't know what about. I don't know Sylvia. And so Sylvia and I sat down. And Sylvia tells me, she said, I'm really struggling. She's the pastor of a rural church. And she said, we just don't have any water. She said, I get up in the morning and I've got to walk an hour and a half to the community borehole. And then I'm pushing my wheelbarrow. And then I got to walk back filled with, I got 4 or 5 gallon jugs in my wheelbarrow. And I've got to bring that back. And that takes an hour and a half to get back. I start my day every day doing that. Wow. She told us about her church. She said, my church is an hour and a half from Guerrero, where our main, where we're kind of headquartered out of. Guerrero is one of the larger cities in the whole country. She said, my church is about an hour and a half away, and we meet under a tree. And of course, in Africa, you don't have any Africa stories without a tree and a plastic chair. Okay, if you don't have that, it's not a true story. Okay. So anyway, so she told us about this, and then she said that this was where she lives, in this little hut, and after the service, where she lives is about a 10-minute walk from that tree, and the people like to come over and have some tea or something like that. And you see the round hut. That's actually called a kitchen hut. And then you see the cement building back there. It's a one-room thing. She and her family live in those 2 huts. 3 people in one, 3 people in the other. And that's where she lives. She told me that she had saw one of our Jesus film showings years earlier. And God had called her. She was wonderfully saved, and later God called her to the ministry, and now she's doing this, and they're obviously very poor people. But you know what? Just because somebody's poor doesn't mean they're stupid. Doesn't have desires. And this is what the inside of her kitchen hut looks like. Her husband did this for her. Is this cool? In the inside, put the shelves out of kind of a mud stuff and got the plates put on there and a place to sit. That's inside that round hut that you just saw. Is that amazing? Well, this is Sylvia and her husband, and he's obviously a handyman kind of guy, so he's always out looking for work someplace, getting a few bucks, and so she's at home doing the thing. And this is Sylvia carrying that wood on her head. So if you ladies would like to learn how to do this, this is how she does it. Let's see this little video here, and can you imagine how much that weighs? And then I told you earlier about the wheelbarrow. Here she is with the wheelbarrow and those 4 or 5 gallon jugs. How much do you think 20 gallons of water weighs? 8 pounds a gallon. And you know, there's some roots, and she does this every day. God bless her. One of the things she does with the water is she makes homemade bricks. They call them farm bricks. They take the water and they mix it with a certain kind of dirt, and they put it in a form, and it dries by itself. And they lay them out like that to dry. And then after they do that, they pile them all up in an igloo, and she takes those logs and puts in there. Then they cover it with mud, and they leave the fire going for 3 days, and it bakes those bricks so they get hard. And then they take and she sells those bricks. She said, Les, she says, if I had water, it would make my life so much easier. She says, now I could make more bricks. I told her, well, Sylvia, I said, we don't have any money. I can't promise you that we can drill for water. But I said, I will promise you this. I said, we'll hire a guy to come up there and see if there's any water in the area. And we did, and he said, it's not great, but I'd recommend you drilling here. Well, I need you to know, after he told me that, I went to a church in Houston, and I told the congregation the story. And I said, I got to raise $15,000. And that church did amazing things. And then I went to a church in Temple. And they did amazing things. And in 2 weeks, we had our $15,000. Have I told you this is God's project? So I sent the money over there, and here's the borehole company. And they're drilling. The only thing bummer about this picture is you see all the dust flying? That means there's no water. Whew. They went down, and at 40 meters, they hit a thimble full of water. And I said, keep drilling. And they drilled all the way down to 110 meters and didn't hit any more water. It's not always easy. This was on a Friday. Margaret contacted me and she said, Les, they drilled down and there was only a thimble full of water. She says, I'm going to put the word out and we're going to pray for God's intervention. And that was the word she used. We want God to intervene. And they had people praying all weekend long. On Monday, the borehole company went back up there. It's an hour-and-a-half drive back up there. And they put something down the hole. And because they had drilled down to 110 meters, and they were going to put something down to 110 meters. And when they got down to 40 meters, they go plump. The hole had filled up with water from the 110 meters all the way up to 40 meters. Whew. I love this stuff. So quickly, they put up a what we call a water tower in a 5,000-liter tank. And then they run some pipes, and there's Sylvia in the yellow, and they turn the faucet on, and now she's got water. And the neighbors start coming, because you see all the neighbors had to walk 3 hours also. And then you see right up here, we put up a solar panel. There's no battery, so just when the sun's shining, they've turned the switch on, and it fills up the water tank. And when the water tank goes down, they fill it back up again. The only one problem, Pastor. All these people are coming for water, and you know what a good pastor does? They invite them to church. And now her church has more than doubled in size. And they don't have enough plastic chairs. Oh. Well, I got to tell you this story about Jesus. Have y'all heard of the Jesus film? Okay. There's a film based on, I believe it's the book of Luke, that they put this film together. And the cool part about it is you can get it in like almost any language in the world. And in Zimbabwe, there's 3 primary languages. Of course, English is one of them, but then there's also 2 native tongues, shall we say. And one of them is Shona. Well, anyway, Noah gets a hold of me and he said, Les, he said, I want you to come over here and help me plant a church. Did I tell you I'm a layman and I work at a CPA firm? Do I know anything about planting a church? Nah. So Noah, you want me to come over there and help you plant a church? Yes, and what I need you to do is I need you to bring along a Jesus film kit. We have one, we've been using it, but it's old and it's beyond its last leg. And I says, okay, and I contacted my brother who attends this church in Kansas City, and I said, would you talk to them and see if they would get one of these Jesus film kits for us? And he did, they did, and they sent it to me. So now I got the Jesus film kit. And what it is, it's really a small projector. It's just like your projector up here. Okay, it's like that, only mini. And then they have a cloth screen, and they have a couple little speakers and whatnot. And then the film itself is on this little microchip. I mean, it's crazy small. And on that little chip, they've got this film in English and Shona and in Ndebele and a couple other languages of Zimbabwe. So no matter where we are in Zimbabwe, he can now show this Jesus film because it's all in this little crazy technology. But it works. So I now have this thing. And my pastor at the time, Jeff Marco, he said, Les, he said, I understand you're going to Zimbabwe next Thursday. And he said, what I want you to do is get up in front of the congregation and tell them what you're going to do. I said, sure. So I got the kit. And I'm telling my church folks there at New Braunfels, next Thursday I'm leaving. I'm taking this kit with me. And I'm going to get there, and we're going to go under a tree, and we're going to show this Jesus film, and we're going to plant a church. And as I'm saying this to my church folks, now these are people I go to church with, whenever I'm in town. And the devil starts talking to me. As I'm telling them, the devil says, Les, you've never even seen the Jesus film. True. And that's where that sucker, he takes one piece of truth and then he, stirs it up. He said, how do you know anybody's even going to show? I didn't know. On and on. So I just took that kit and I went right there and I set it on the altar. And I said, next Saturday night, we're going to plant a church using that Jesus film kit. Well, next Saturday night, I was in Zimbabwe underneath this tree. And I'm looking around and I see one person. And I'm like, uh-oh. Anybody going to show? Well, Noah had this all figured out. He had rented this generator and he had rented these big speakers, and they kind of made this platform-like thing. And we put up our little cloth screen, and they're on the platform, and the praise team is just blowing the music out across the Africa countryside. Well, those folks ain't got anything to do. But when they heard the noise, like, let's go find out what's going on. Hundreds of people came. That was... When the movie was over, Noah invited people who wanted to accept Jesus to come forward, and over 100 people. He said, tomorrow morning we're going to plant a church. We're going to start a church, and we're going to use the local elementary school. We use one of their rooms so everybody knew, because that's where all their kids went to school, and said, just meet us there tomorrow morning. And so they met us there the next morning. And then as the days went by, the pastor, we got some little piece of land, and the pastor built a kind of a thatch shed thing there, and we got some plastic chairs. And here's the pastor and his family. God bless them. And as time goes by, we had a mission trip go over there, and we laid bricks. And now this is what it looks like today. Riverdale Church of the Nazarene. So that building there is kind of like part parsonage, and the front room is bigger part. And so if the weather's nice, of course we just meet outside, because you see the tree right next to the house there, and that's where we meet. But if it's rainy, obviously then not that many people come, and so we just meet inside the house. And on and on. And we even have an outhouse on the you got to have one of them if I'm going to be there. And anyway, so God just bless us. Oh, I got to tell you about this. Woodlands. Noah, what he did is he had his what they call the evangelism team. His wife was in charge of the evangelism team, and she would round up a bunch of people, and she would go to him, go to Noah, and said, "Okay, our evangelism team is ready to plant another church. Where do you want us to plant it?" And he said, in Guerrero there's a new subdivision that's being built called Woodlands Park. It's a planned community. Now, it's crazy because there's 80% unemployment. People are broke. There are very few cash-paying jobs. So what they do is the majority of the family goes to other countries and works and send money back. And then they send money back and they build part of a house. And so Margaret, she gets her evangelism team together, and she goes over to this Woodlands Park. It's the planned community for 2,000 homes. And she's there, and she's knocking on doors and all that. And you see all the houses there in different stages of being built. They send a few bucks back, and they'll build part of a wall and that kind of a thing, and it takes a while. But the houses are pretty simple, basic. And then Noah contacts me, and he said, "Les," he said, "I got a problem." He said, "This Woodlands Park community is a planned community." And he said the developer marked off 6 spots for churches. 5 of them have already been sold to other church organizations. There's only 1 left. He said, "We got to buy it." He says, "If we don't, we can't put a church there." And I says, "Well, how much they want for the land?" Well, he said, the reason why it's not been sold yet is because it's the biggest piece of land of the 6 church parcels. And it's therefore the most expensive. And they want $25,000 for that dirt. Now, fair enough, there's sewers laid in and some kind of roads and stuff. So there's, the developer's got costs in. I get that. Okay. But I also get that we don't have $25,000. So I said, "No," I said, that's great. But I said, I'm sorry, we don't have that. And he goes, "Les, would you pray about it?" I said, "Sure." Now, as a layman, I can say, "Sure." And, it's one of those things that, hey, I'll pray. And, and then how much do we really pray? You see what I'm saying? Okay. The next day he calls me. He said, Les, did you pray about it? I was standing in the kitchen of my house talking to Noah on the phone when he asked me if I had prayed. I think I'd put myself ahead and just knew what the answer would be, that there, hey, we can't help because there's no money. That's what I was. So I just looked up, and then I remember that late night driving in a car, and God said, help Noah. This was one of those times that was, do you mean it? That you will? I said, Noah, I want to help. But I said, in seriousness, we don't have the money. And he says, I know you don't. He says, because my people have already prayed about it. And he said, they know that we don't have the money, but they've prayed through about it. And so I went back to the developer and told the developer that we want the land, but we don't have the $25,000. And the developer says, okay, I'll tell you what, you come up with $5,000 and I'll hold the land for you. And I said, no, I said, that's great, but I don't have $5,000. He says, I know you don't, but he says, I also talked to the developer a little bit more, and she said, if you come up with $2,000 now, she'll give you 3 months to come up with the rest. Well, Lane and I juggled some things around, and we sent $2,000 because we said we would help Noah. The next week, I got a letter in the mail. It was from a family that has helped Noah's farm in the past, but they certainly didn't know anything about this. And the letter said, please use this check for what you need. It was for $5,000. Wow. Once again, God's project. Well, so I went over there. As the days went by, it was just amazing. God just blessed and blessed and blessed and blessed. And as the money came in, the developer got a hold of Noah and said, Noah, you guys have done such a fantastic job. She says, I'm going to reduce the price by $5,000. Have you ever heard of a developer? You cut the deal? This is God's project. So we got the land paid for it, and Noah said, come on over here. He said, we're going to have a groundbreaking service. And I said, Noah, you got to have, if you're going to do a groundbreaking service, that means you're ready to build. And we don't have any money. Every dime went to the land. He said, now, come on over here. Okay. And, well, I got there, and they had this tent up, and all these people were walking around. And I said, well, no, what's all these people doing? And he said, they're on a prayer walk. He says, we're going to build a church here, and this is holy ground. And they're praying. And, well, if you can see, right here is some white plastic chairs. And I'm sitting on that one right there. Just like this. And they're praising and all this stuff, and we're having a groundbreaking service, and in my mind I'm thinking, Lord, I've got 13 friends from my New Braunfels church that had signed up to go on a work and witness trip the following summer to help build this church, and we don't have a dime. I said, Lord, I don't know what to do. I said, I can't have my friends coming over here and digging into this hard rock dirt. I mean, I said, that just wouldn't make sense. We're out of shape Americans. I'm having a pity party, okay? Can I say that? I've seen all these miracles that I've told you about. And then the praise team gets up. And this is what the praise team sings. When peace like my way, when sorrows like sea billows cross, whatever my Lord, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. 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 That's a gut check. The next day, I got on an airplane and flew home. Noah called me right after I got home. He said, Les, he says, I know your situation. Noah and I were like brothers. God has put us together. And it was amazing. And Noah said, do you have a couple of $100? I said, yeah. I said, we can do that. He said, well, I got 20 guys that have signed up. And he said, if you come up with a couple of $100, we can get some pickaxe and shovels, and they want to build their own church. And here they are. These people, they wanted, I mean, it was a real partnership. There's a sweat equity. And a year later, when our work and witness team showed up, God provided, and this is what we saw when we pulled up in our vans. The part of the walls were up, and the 13 people piled out of the vans and went to work. And here's laying bricks. And she built that whole wall. She had never laid a brick in her life, and it was neat. And God just kept providing.
How many bricks did you lay? 10.
In case you didn't hear, Lane said she asked how many bricks did I lay? And well, anyway, we're moving along. So, somebody's got to manage the project. And God just kept providing.
Amen.
This was Dedication Sunday. We had over 1,200 people show up from all over. Oh, it was... this is what it looks like. And this is the 2,000 home subdivision that's being built. I think back to that phone call standing in my living room or standing in my kitchen. Les, did you pray? The joy I would have missed if I'd have said, we can't do this. We can't. God can. I'll close with this story. Noah had me, I was over there on a mission trip, and Noah had me speak at this rural church setting, and we had several, it was kind of a combined thing, and there was 300-400 people out in, just under trees, and we used part of the school building, and I'm sitting on the side of the platform there, and this Noah, and then Susan and another lady. Noah was talking, and he felt led to say, is there anybody in the audience that needs special prayer? The lady in the middle there, her name was Susan, she got up. And with all the commotions, now over there, many of the kids would be in the service here with us, and they'd just be running around. I mean, that's just the way it is, and they all accept it and whatnot. But out of all that mayhem, out in the middle, this lady stood up, and somehow my eyes just got drawn to her. And I go, huh. She stood up, but she didn't come forward. And she just stood there. Well, the lady in the pink there went to her and escorted her up front. And then I realized that this lady was blind. So she's up there, and Noah's praying with her. And while he's praying, God speaks to me and says, go talk to that lady. About what? Just go talk to that lady. I took this picture, waited till the service was over, and I went over to Noah, and I said, Noah, I need to go talk to that lady. I said, can you tell me anything about her? And he says, oh, it's a sad story. He said, her and her husband didn't have any kids, and they worked in this little farming stuff, taking care of growing some things and taking care of some animals. And then 15 years ago, her husband died. And in some parts of Africa, if the tradition is like if the husband dies, and the wife then goes back to her family. But she didn't have any kids and just didn't have much. And his family, you see, they can, she's not blood. Okay? So she doesn't have to, they don't have to be a part of her. But in this case, because she knew how to take care of animals and she knew how to grow some things, they said, hey, why don't you come live with us? And she did. And she did for the next 15 years until she went blind. And then they kicked her out because she can't do anything for them anymore. She was living on the streets. Her brother heard about it. He said, you come live with me. She went and lived with her brother, and when she got there, the brother's wife realized that she was blind and she couldn't do anything for herself. And she told the brother's wife, said, if she stays, I'm leaving. And he says, well, she's my blood. I got to take care of her. And she left. Another lady in the area heard the story, and because her family was all in South Africa and other countries, and she had an extra room. She said, Susan, you come live with me. I'll take care of you. 2 weeks later, I took this picture. I went and talked to her, and while I was talking to her, I introduced myself. Of course, she couldn't see me. I said I was one of the speakers today and blah, blah, blah. And I looked her in the eye, and I saw 2 white spots. And I thought to myself, now I'm no medical nothing, okay? But I thought maybe she's got cataracts. So I finished and went to Noah, and I said, Noah, here's a little bit of money. Take her to an eye doctor and see if she might have cataracts. And he did, and she did. A year later, I'm back over there, and I'm sitting in a plastic chair, and they bring Susan to me, and they said, Les, there's somebody who would like to see you. You see that little white paper in Susan's hand? It was this white paper. At the top here, it says first name, last name, date of birth. See, we were having a medical mission thingy, and they were using this like a little triage card or, whatever they do. And I said, Susan, would you read this for me? She said, first name, last name. I said, Susan, what did the doctor say about your other eye? And he said, well, I had cataracts in it, and they could do surgery. But she says, I'm so happy. She said, the lady I'm staying with, I can help her, and everything is great. She said, I'm just so happy, happy, happy. And so we parted, and I turned to Noah, and I said, Noah, here's a little bit of money. I said, please take her back to the doctor and get her other eye fixed. And he did, and she did, and then
this is Susan, the lady who was blind. Now she can see. Susan, how are you? Ma mnofara here.
Ndinofara.
Ma kuona.
Ndakuona.
Ndiratidze Mr. Bones ari kupi?
Ah.
Ndo Mr. Bones.
Eh.
Ko maipepe ndevapi?
Ah.
Ko who is your pastor? Ndiratidze mufundisi wenyu. Ndiwo mufundisi wenyu Felix. Ko vana vamuri kuvaona? Thank you very much. There is God in heaven. Glory to God.
Amen. I had my first eye surgery when I was 3 years old, and I've had many eye surgeries. I've been to a lot of eye doctors, and I see the poster. God, why do you want me to go talk to that lady? I had no clue. But it just happened to be. Oh, the total cost so that lady now can see just fine in both eyes, $280. I'm suggesting that if God says do something, you do it. I had no idea that I'd be instrumental in helping that lady see again. And on and on. One thing I know, I was blind, but now I can see.